Welcome back, guys. So here we're just gonna do a quick recap of what I'm calling the final portal effect. And if I had more time, I'd probably spend more time rendering out point layers with a higher point count. And one of the things we didn't really discuss that much is when I would use rasterized points. So when I would rasterize the point cloud into a volume, or when I decide to actually just render the points straight up. And for me, that's usually dependent on the shot. So if it's a relatively wide shot like this, if I can crank the amount of points up to a level where you can't even tell that it's made out of particles, then it works fine. I'll just leave it. But sometimes you also want something to look particularly smoky and full, so then it makes sense to rasterize. And obviously if it's a closer up shot, you probably need to rasterize to make the most out of your point sim. So not much. This is pretty much the same as we had previously comped it with a few tweaks. So some of those tweaks, I'll pause this quickly, include the animated gain we applied to some of these layers to slightly brighten and darken some of these sims where it felt like it needed to do that. So in this case, like for example these embers, there's a subtle bright flash and then it goes dim quite quickly and then it fades off slowly until they're gone. And if I disable this, you can see they would have just been continuing around the room, which, you know, looks kind of cool. But I've gone ahead and duplicated that keyframe for most of these layers, and that's using the instance which I showed before. The only other thing I've done, and you can see this, the merger of all of these layers still looks pretty much the same, and it does look kind of strange, but I've written that out just as a pre-comp. So from that point onwards, I'm just loading this, because most of the magic is happening here. Playing with levels to make sure I've got range in this point. Before I'm going anywhere near a glow, I'm actually clipping the alpha. So I've put down a brightness and contrast, make sure I've clipped white and it's only affecting the alpha. It's just to manage, you kind of need to manage alpha for a lot of this stuff. If you're burning in or plussing a lot, you've got to make sure that you've got a consistent alpha. And if I put my mouse over here and you look down to the bottom of the screen here, you can see my alpha value is going all the way above 1. So I keep that in check. Here I'm merging the flakes on, and then we come in with this 3 blurred glow, which gives me a very soft glow. And the whole point of that for me is to do a glow that I have so much control over that I can sort of make sure that you can never see the edge of one of these glows. So I never want to see something like that. It's actually very subtle. It looks quite strong on black, but in the scene it's mainly a sort of soft grade, but it makes a big difference. And then some final contrasting, and I'm displacing itself. So I have this sort of gamut up value here, clipped white, and I'm plugging that in displace, and if I disable that, you can see it's just displacing outwards from this area. So that kind of helps make it feel a bit more magical, and it helps with the points, because here it looks quite particulate, and this could help sort of merge everything together. And if you go really extreme, it looks pretty freaky. And then I've taken the environment render and use that to manipulate the color of our darker points there, just to help with the integration. And I think that works pretty well as well. For the environment, it's the same as it was. I have a few resizes here because some of my layers I forgot to render full res. I have a subtle glow. So I didn't go for my full glow setup because I just wanted the door to bleed a little bit. And then, like I said, I've copied that brightness and contrast keyframe, and just so that the light also quickly goes brighter and then fades off when the rest of the portal fades off. And then the biggest thing which I added is to take the portal and put the same kind of displays affecting the environment before I merge the portal on. So if you look here, that's adding that refractiveness, which so much in the magical effects stuff, especially from directors and clients, they want to see the effect warp the environment slightly, and it works really well, especially with this mode. In Nuke, I haven't found something as good as this, so I'm still on the lookout, but this is just perfect. So you can see if we look at the full image now, we do have pretty much the full top half of frame covered in this blue magic. And if I disable this displace, you can see how everything shifts slightly behind the portal, and when I play it, it leaves like this interesting rippling effect here. So the subtle bending of this environment here from that displace is kind of really effective. And that's it. So nothing too complicated going on here. It's just basically bringing these layers together in a way that's useful, and then, you know, just tweaking those values and colors until it looks right. There's so many ways you can go with this setup as well. As I showed before, like just brightening up or just dimming down one or two of those layers gives a completely new type of effect. So even if I take my pre-comped layers here and I look at the final image and I come back before the glow, I can knock this right back, and that kind of much more subtle, that's a bit more naturalistic, and it's something like that is probably what you would see in a live action feature film. So they don't go for so intense that, well, in most movies where it's well done, it'll be something like this where there's maybe one element that's super intense and everything else is kind of dull, but it works because it's sitting on top of a background that's just completely uninteresting. So that's kind of the realistic looking portal. I have a habit of over cranking everything, so my final version looks like this. And obviously there's places you can go beyond that as well if you want to get ridiculous. You can see that background layer of points that we made in SOPs is playing a huge part in kind of merging this whole portal together. So if I just put the gamma up, you can see loads more going on. And maybe less saturated, maybe more. So lots of range, lots of options, especially if you come all the way back here. And I mean, it's pretty much got everything we need from Houdini, and the rest of the art making process can happen in here. So I hope you enjoyed week 1 and 2, and I'll see you in week 3, and we'll take on the magical shield. Bye.